Hello everyone and welcome back to our Portuguese homestead. Today I want to give you a tour of our garden. If you are new here, we are in Central Portugal, which is growing zone 9B. And I've been doing one about every 4 weeks. So if you want to go back and see how I was doing before, you can do so. It's been a little while, there's been lots happening, so let me show you. First of all, here you can see the shade netting that we put up for our pumpkins, at least this row of the pumpkins. We made it because I was kind of noticing that they didn't really look happy. They were kind of drooping a lot and not really recovering. They were not, but most importantly, they were not really putting out new leaves. So it's been a couple of days since we put this up, and I feel like the first results are pretty good. Most of the pumpkins look much happier because they get a break during the day of the really scorching hot Portuguese sun, and they already started to pump out some new nice green leaves. The flowers that they are producing also don't really look so sunburnt as they did before, so now I have high hopes that they will actually produce some pumpkins. So this is my first year that I'm doing a larger amount of food, a bigger garden, and really trying to learn a lot. It's also my first year growing here in Portugal, so there's lots to learn. And one of the things I'm still trying to figure out is how many plants we need per type of vegetable. So in the beginning I actually put in about 10 to 12 zucchini courgette plants. I planted them a little bit too early, and we had quite a long colder period in the spring, so not all of them really survived properly, and they didn't really pick up once it started to get warmer. Some of them did, and they're producing very well now. But I also kind of figured out that I had too many to begin with. I think any person who grows zucchini would tell you that, because once they start going, they really start going. But because I had so many, I decided to just start pulling out some of them that were not really picking up, that were not producing much fruit. And I am at the point that I'm really thinking about, does this plant still deserve the water that I'm giving it? Is it giving me something back? And for these 4, I felt like they didn't. And I think in the next couple weeks I'll pull out more as I see fit, because they're not producing as much as I feel that they're worth their water, which is very survival of the fittest. But drought here in Portugal, especially here more in the interior, it gets quite hot and dry, so we really need to be conscientious of our water usage. And right now I'm feeling if it's not giving me anything, it's not worth it. I might also start pulling out some of these smaller tomatoes, which feels really bad because I love tomatoes and I want it a lot. But as I'll show you in a minute, the tomatoes that we do have are producing well, so I don't think we really need that many for now. Sometimes I see people say, oh, it's so easy, you can grow everything here in Portugal. And while you can grow most things, I feel like the heat is quite a big challenge. Maybe closer to the coast where you don't have those very high spikes, it's easier, maybe more in the mountains. But here where we live, it can be quite a challenge to keep things alive. And so for now, one of my strategies is also just to keep them alive through August. And then, because the first frost day is not until November probably, I can keep them alive long enough that they will produce fruit in the end for me. This is my courgette plant that's doing the most work, the very best. I'm actually not sure what type it is, but as you can see, it's a lighter type that you can't actually find in the supermarket because they bruise very easily. And as you can see, I kind of forgot about this one. Next up we have my lettuce. As I just said, not everything is easy to grow here in the summer. One of which is lettuce, just because it gets so hot and it doesn't like the direct sun. So what I did is I put these pellets over it, and the idea was to grow my cucumbers up, but they've not been growing very well, the cucumbers. But just the shade alone from this is working quite well, and as you can see, it's not drooping at all, even not during the day. It's quite delicious. It doesn't really get that bitter. And so I think we can say that this has been a successful experiment to just create enough shade that the lettuce can over summer instead of over winter. It's not been bolting. I got this lettuce just from a local agricultural shop as starters, so I'm not actually sure what type it is. It's a green with a brown-ish look, and they're good to pick just as the leaves, not as an entire crop, and they just keep producing. We have another block of lettuce in another part of the garden with the same type of structure over it, which is like a green curly leaf lettuce, and that's not performing so well. So it's good to learn which lettuces do like the summer or don't mind the summer so much, and this is definitely one of them. So I showed you these tomato plants in the last garden tour as well. Back then I was saying I'll try some different trellising methods, and in this row I wanted to do just a couple sticks. So while I did do it for 2 of the tomato plants in this row, I actually never got around to doing the rest. So now they're, as you can see, just kind of bushing out, laying on the ground. They're producing fruit. They don't seem to be bothered by it. One of you guys in the comments was actually saying that your grandfather used to grow them like this and that it was actually fine. So don't judge me. I didn't find the time. I'm a busy woman. It's good to try a different type, a couple different types. I do really like the stick method because you can just tie them on, but with everything else going on, I just couldn't handle it. With the heat, I've noticed that not all of them are producing more small fruits, but some of them have. This one is a green zebra, and it has still produced some new tomatoes, which is really nice. It's not like big bunches, it's just a couple here and there, but from our earlier sowing we already had some, and they're really quite good, so I'm happy we're getting some more. Next up, our watermelons. As you saw in the last tour, the leaves were quite small. They still are, but they really started growing a little bit, kind of spreading out. And as you can see, we have a watermelon. We actually have a couple. This is the one that started to grow first, but we actually have about 8 watermelons that are really starting to grow now. I don't know if they'll get very big, but I'm happy that we got some watermelons in the first place. This is our row of tomatoes where we're doing a pretty standard trellising with just a rope on top. But as you can see, I've not been very good at pruning them on one stem. I left quite a few too many suckers go. That doesn't look very good. Some of them have this. I'm actually not sure what this is. This is an asphyxiated blossom, I think. And over here we have one more that's already ripening, and that also has this. But as you can see, I've been pruning the leaves enough so that they don't become giant bushes. I'm still trying to figure out what grows well here, what does it need, but also we're using the soil for the first time in 30-40 years. So we've done a lot of amending over the winter, but I'm definitely learning that we need to do more this coming winter. So we're thinking composting, we're doing a couple different heaps. One of them I'm adding the chicken manure. So we're working on all that. I think especially things like the tomatoes really need that. But I'm also just trying to figure out what type of varieties I really like, which are good producers for me. So I planted 3 types. I planted the green zebra just to see. I planted the Roma tomatoes for pasta sauce, and then I planted the Bois Oxford tomato for just fresh eating. So far it's been a bit of a roller coaster, also because we had a very wet June. They just got too much water over that month, and I think that's one of the causes why we had a little bit of blossom end rot and asphyxiated ends. So far our Roma tomatoes have been very good producers for us. They, even with the heat, they pumped out lots more new tomatoes. They're ripening very well, but to be honest, it's just not a very exciting tomato. It's not one that's very nice to also put on your sandwich. So next year I'm definitely branching out more. I'm thinking about maybe going into a bigger seed order with some friends so we can all have smaller batches of different varieties. We'll see. I definitely like the flavor on the green zebra tomatoes, but they're just not very high producers, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna do them again. There's so many varieties out there. I'm gonna do many more next year. And while I do kind of like the flavor of the Oxhearts, I feel like they're very, maybe a bit finicky. Maybe they need special care and attention. I don't know, but they're just not coming out the way that I had anticipated. To give the garden some color in these dry months, I planted a couple of flowers, one of them being zinnias, and I wish I had planted so many more. I absolutely love them, and the pollinators love them too. They're really attracting. Ja, die is mooi hè? My co-presenter is here again as well. They do bring a really nice pop of color to the garden, so I love them. I just wish I had planted many more. In the corner of this bed I also made this teepee for some black beans. I planted them a couple weeks ago and they're not growing very tall yet. Maybe if the heat kind of slows down again they will pick up though. And here in this corner I had planted these pumpkins quite a while back. They stayed small, 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 and then all of a sudden they just started exploding. They're pumping out new leaves every day, and as you can see, they've also started to produce actual pumpkins. If I'm not mistaken, these are the Hokkaido variety. This is one of the blocks of corn that I planted the day before my last garden tour. As you can see, it's coming up quite well. It doesn't have a super high germination rate, I would say about 75-80, but it's giving me two pretty good blocks. I did sow them quite heavily, so it's 2 blocks, and since I sowed them quite late, I'm not expecting them before August. And finally, a short message about our aubergines. I did film myself talking about this, but I didn't actually film. So here is some b-roll of how well our aubergines are doing. I planted them by this trench that I dug just as a test for alternative water methods, and I absolutely love them. As you can see, the aubergines next to the trench are thriving. Since it became really hot this summer, they just exploded, and they've now started to produce fruit as well. So we'll have aubergines pretty soon, I think. And just as a comparison, I also planted some that I'm hand watering, and they're just not really growing as well as these. So the deep watering in the trenches really helps, and it works for us well because of our soil. It's a little bit more clayish, so you can really use it as a sponge instead of more sand-like soil where it would just flow away if you dig a trench like this. So we want to use alternative methods. I don't really want to hold the hose all summer, every summer. So we're thinking about alternative methods, and I don't really want to use drip irrigation because it's extra plastic. So if we would have to, I would do it, of course, but we first want to explore some other options, one of them being this method. And so far, excellent results, and next year we're going to do the whole garden like this. That's my garden tour for July 2020. I hope you enjoyed. Some things are going well, some things not so much, but that's all fun and games for me. It's exciting to learn new things and see stuff grow and have some delicious food in the end. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye!